The story of Exodus, and just by way of, if you weren't here, how we're going to kind of approach the book is we're going to take it at about 30,000 feet for about 3 weeks. So last week we did section 1. We're going to do the second portion today. Then we're going to do the last third of the book next week. You say 3 weeks through the whole book of Exodus? Well, what we're doing is we're going to kind of fly over it, look at the high spots, and then what we're going to do is come back through it again, except we're going to take a look at it through the vantage point of different characters in the Exodus, because it's my contention that though there are 2.5 million people that are going to leave Egypt, there's about 2.5 million stories on the Exodus. There's 2.5 million ways this was viewed, how it was seen, how it was experienced. And so we're just going to take a look at a few of them when we come back through. We'll spend 3 weeks on Moses because we get the most material on him. But we're going to take a Sunday, we're going to look at how Pharaoh saw the Exodus. Because I think we have something to learn from Pharaoh. I don't think Pharaoh is just, the black hat with the long twisty mustache, I think he's got something to say to us, all right? And Aaron, his brother, what would it have been like to have been the brother of Moses, or to be his sister, his big sister, Miriam? And how does she handle the Exodus? And so we're going to go through each one of these characters. So we're going to go through the book of Exodus a bunch of times. Even though we're flying high up above at 30,000 feet, we're going to get into the sand of Egypt ultimately as we come back through it. So, because I'm really excited, because I got to tell you, coming back from the sabbatical and getting to share and getting to experience some things at other churches, I really am excited about the fact that though, even right now, what time is it? It's 10:40. I don't know how many Christians out there are sitting in church right now listening to somebody yell at them for the next half hour, okay? So we should just stop and pray for them, pray for you. Across the world. I mean, if you think about it, with time zones and stuff, church and worship has been sweeping across the globe for the last, I don't know how many hours, right? So we're just a part of a grand choir. And I'm just adamant. The word adamant's the right word. I am so adamant that your walk with Jesus stays yours. And that you don't become the person to your right or your left, or you don't feel like you have to be, I use this term a lot, this homogenization of Christianity and Christians to where we become evangelical Christians that vote the same, speak the same, listen to the same stuff, dress the same, read the same books, use the same plumbers. No offense, we'll all use it. But electricians, there you go right there. And so, we use all the same people, because listen, we're all different. And we need to accentuate that and celebrate it, not try to cram everybody into, you got to watch this and you got to do that. And talking about movies and things like that, how many of you have seen the movie The Exodus? Yeah, with Christian Bale, some of you, right? It's okay, you can raise your hand, no one's going to judge you. And if they do, it's their problem, So I haven't seen it, because I don't think anybody should. No, that's a judgment card. No, I haven't seen it, just because I still struggle to pay $10 and $40 for a bag of popcorn. So I'll wait till it comes out on Netflix. I had to tell you, I love the idea. I love the fact when Hollywood takes Christian stories and makes them into movies. Now I know there might be somebody here who says, well, but they don't get this right, or don't they get. I just want to say something off to the side here, okay? We got to stop yelling at them to make movies that come from the Bible, and then when they make them, we criticize them. They don't do it exactly the way we want to do it. Okay? Can we do that? Can we just say, thank God that the story gets put out there? And let me just tell you something. The renditions of it, though the details may be a little here and a little there, I just like the fact that we're talking about it. Just the fact we can talk about it is huge. So if you're one that gets really bunched up in the undergarments when you're watching that kind of stuff, I just want to tell you, chill out. Come on. I doubt that America's going to hell in a handbasket because Christian Bale's playing Moses, okay? Listen, the Bible said, how old was Moses when he finally comes into, when he finally approaches Pharaoh? Anybody remember this from last week? How old was he? 80 years old. Tell me who's going to go to the movie when the 80-year-old guy is supposed to be doing that. Christian Bale looks good with a sleeveless shirt on. I get that. I don't have a man crush on him. I'm just saying. that even if Hollywood, I mean, isn't this the case? Even when Hollywood decides to come up with how would God rescue 2.5 million people out of Egypt, the last thing he's going to do is pick some 80-year-old guy, and then his brother's 83 years old, and they're going to send him. Okay, that would be a comedy. This is an action, and so, but that's the thing. And that's why I start with God is crazy. God is crazy on how he does things. I remember that movie back in the mid-80s, The Gods Must Be Crazy, and that Coke bottle falls this way, hits him in the head. I mean, I just think about the idea that how crazy God is. I mean, when he says, my ways are not your ways, nor are my thoughts your thoughts, I know we say that with a bit of sentimentality, but when you read the history, it's like if you had 2.5 million people to rescue. So for example, let's say Portland and Salem were captured by the Chinese, okay? Or North Koreans, all right? Now they're the bad guys today. All right, so the North Koreans, all right? Now some of you would get way too excited about that, a bunch of my conservative wackos over here. But if Portland and Salem were to be captured, what would the federal government do? If you were in charge of the government and the military, how would you rescue them? Right? What would you send in? Military, which would have what? Guns, bombs, drones, cruise missiles, nuclear weapons, right? That's the way we'd want to see it, right? That's the way we want to see it go down. But God says, yeah, I got 2.5 million people, they've been enslaved, they've been POWs for about 400 years. I'm going to get these two old guys, and I'm going to send a stick with them. Just grab that stick and go rescue 2.5 million people. That's how God decides to do it. And for 400 years, these 2.5 million people, or it's grown to be 2.5 million people, God has been preparing them for such a miraculous, awesome experience that we're going to get into today. Sometimes it takes a long time for God to prepare our hearts for a miracle. If you're here this morning, you're like, God, or Mike, I'm so much wanting, I'm needing God to do a miracle in my life. People who say those things have their hearts prepared for a miracle. Because you don't get miracles on the cheap. You know, none of us pray for a miracle if it's not that big of a deal. Big deals require miracles. And this is a 400-year preparation for a miracle. So as we walk into this, we start in Exodus chapter 7, and I'm going to story tell a lot of this, and then we'll come back through, and I have a few pieces of scripture I just want to point out that I think are interesting for the morning. So as we get into chapter 7, Moses and Aaron, 80 and 83 years old, slowly make their way to Pharaoh. And what's the message that God gives Moses and Aaron to tell Pharaoh? What's the message? Let my people go. So that what? This is important. So that they can what? So worship where? In the desert. Which isn't much of an invitation right there, right? I mean, when Moses and Aaron show up to the Hebrews, to the Israelites, and say, hey, listen, hey guys, we're here. We're going to set you free so we can go and have a church service out in the desert. You guys excited? That's what we're going to do. And they're like, what? I mean, it's not the land of milk and honey that's promised just yet. It's just a promise to worship. That's all it is. And so Moses and Aaron go to Pharaoh. They say, here's what God says. Pharaoh's response is, I don't think so. In fact, God had promised Moses and Aaron that was going to be the case, right? That Pharaoh was not going to buy it. In fact, God says, I'll make sure that he doesn't buy it. I'm just going to sneak around the backside of old Pharaoh and whisper into his ear while you're talking to him, hey, don't listen to those two old guys. Those guys are crazy. You better not let them go. So God is actually, seems like he's thwarting the very mission that he sent Moses and Aaron to go do. But there's a whole plan. So Moses and Aaron go. They approach Pharaoh. Pharaoh says, "Nah, I'm not going to have it. We're not going to do that. That's crazy." And Moses says, "Hey, listen, you better do this, or else, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is going to flex his muscle, and you're going to realize this is a bad decision. So you just need to let him go." Pharaoh says, "Nope, not going to do it." And God brings what? Anybody know what we call these? The 10 plagues. Last service I said the 12 plagues. I don't know why I said 12. But I said it like 7 or 8 times. So it's a good thing we're recording this service, not the last one. All right. So the 10 plagues. So let's go through these. So Moses says, all right, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to have to show you a little bit of God's muscle. And so he goes. And what's the first plague that God sends to Egypt? Because he will not let the people go. What's the first plague? Anybody remember? No? It's what? So somebody, no, you're close. You're working your way backwards. Water turns to what? Water turns to blood. Water turns to blood. Now, I think I'm getting a bit of a ringing here, Jenny. I don't know. Is it me? Do I hear a ringing? Is there a ringing? All right, perfect. It could be because this is totally being used in the wrong way. All right. So the fact of the matter is there's blood in the Nile. Now, I was going to speak for me, okay? If you've known me for any length of time, you know I don't do well with blood. In fact, if I visit you in the hospital and you have any fluids anywhere around, there's a high likelihood I will pass out. All right? So after the first plague, if I was Pharaoh, I'd be out. I mean, you just draw a chalk line around my body. I mean, a whole river full of blood. And the Nile doesn't move very fast, so you can only imagine that as, like along the shorelines, what happens to blood as it sits there for a long period of time? What's it begin to do? It starts to scab up. It starts to coagulate. It gets this thick, crusty surface on the top, like old oatmeal, you know? And am I grossing anybody else out yet? Yeah? So, I mean, and so that's what happens. The whole Nile's huge. And Moses is like, all right, Pharaoh, you asked for it. And here's this, and the smell, been horrible. Oh, geez. So anyways, so there's all this blood. Pharaoh's response is, nah, that's bad, but I'm tougher than that. I'm tougher than that. I'm going to will myself to say no. Well, all right. I'll be back tomorrow. So Moses gives him another chance, right? God gives him another chance. Hey, all you have to do is let them go. No. So what's the second plague? Frogs. You can use your Bible. It's a cheat sheet. That's all right. So the second one's what? Frogs. So the frogs start coming out of the bloody river. It doesn't say that the river stopped being blood. It's just progressively getting worse, one on top of the other on top of the other. So imagine the frogs coming out of that bloody Nile. That would just be, you know. When Noah, they had an all-star tournament in Hermiston. You probably remember this a number of years ago. And we were over in Hermiston, and the hotel had a pool right next to a golf course. And the golf course had this big marshy area. Well, at night, or when it got dark, you could hear all the frogs, you know, chirping in the middle of the night. So the boys went out and gathered up. I don't know, how many frogs did you get? There must have been like 500 frogs. I mean, you and a bunch of the baseball players went out and gathered up all these frogs from the marsh. They brought them back to the pool and started putting them in the pool. Well, I don't know if they know that chlorinated water doesn't work well with frogs. And so I remember the next day hearing the hotel cleanup crew, and they're not yelling, but they're talking real loudly so everybody in the building can hear of how absolutely insane this is that there's frogs all over the pool. I mean, there were piles of frogs. I mean, they're floating on the water, on the side of the water. And in Hermiston, it got so hot in the summer it was like, they were like little nuggets, like little frog nuggets all over. You could smell it. It's in the pool. They're draining the pool. It's an utter mess. At the same time, somebody had knocked their head or something, and there was blood in the pool. They had to empty it. So it was like the plague. There was like bloody pool with frogs. It was a mess. So I can only imagine the entire land covered in frogs and blood, and Pharaoh still tough as nails. Nope, not going to do it. So the third one he sends are what? Gnats. Now you can imagine the gnats come because you got a bunch of coagulated blood in dead frogs. God has a lot to work with here to have these gnats come. You ever walk through a little cloud of gnats? Anybody ever done that? You suck them into your mouth like that? I mean, that's the way it is everywhere. You can't run from them. You have to have your face covered. When you're slapping them, they're sticking to your face because the smell of the blood is bad enough. And now you've got the frogs. And now the frogs are growing because guess what they get to eat? Guess what there's a bunch of around? Gnats. So they're growing and making more babies, little frog babies, little pollywogs all over the place in the blood. And anyway, it's just a mess. His life, Pharaoh's life is crumbling in around him. And everybody else is like, Pharaoh, hey, give this thing up. But Pharaoh's tough. We said last week that diamonds are made under what? Anybody remember this? Pressure. So are lumps of granite. You know, How many of you have heard these, anybody run any of these Spartan races that you hear about? I see them on Facebook once in a while. People do these crazy races. There's one here, Ben, like you run through the mud and jump over walls, and like people are throwing grenades at you, and there's like electrical wires in the water, and you're supposed to say, anybody seen any of these Spartan races? You've seen them? Anybody competed in them at all? You've competed in them? You're nuts. So anyways, pray for Brent Jacobs. Anyways, and I put that on the record. I'm going on the internet, baby. Some of these perfect. I mean, you know, it's like the sense you get through it somewhat unscathed, and you come out the other side, and you're like, I'm tough. Let me tell you something. Tough is overrated. Sometimes being tough is about being highly scared. And old Pharaoh here is terrified. And the pressure around him is coming. It's getting worse and worse. If it's not the gnats, God sends flies. And after the flies, the livestock begin to die, which, by the way, when we talk about livestock dying, it's not just like old Betsy falling over in the field. We're talking their money. Let's say it this way. The country went bankrupt. Their livestock was their currency. They lost all their money. Boils, they all get boils. I've never had a boil, but just saying that word gives me the heebie-jeebies to get a boil. So hail comes down, ruins all the crops. The locusts come in, then darkness covers. I mean, and at this time, the people, Pharaoh, everybody, they're like, you gotta give this up, man. I don't know what rock bottom looks like, but I think we're hitting it. No, I'm going to be strong to the bitter end. I want to be like Frank Sinatra when they carry me out on the gurney. It's going to say, I did it my way. That's the saddest song. It's the saddest song. So Moses comes in and says, listen, you've had 9 tries at this. This last one, you don't want to mess around with. If you don't let these people go so they can worship, the firstborn will die. Firstborn of everybody, everything will die. Pharaoh's like, stiff upper lip, not going to do it. Nope. So God tells Moses to gather the Israelites, and he says, okay, everybody go to their homes. And what's going to happen tonight will be a watershed moment in all of human history. What's going to happen tonight will change the face of humanity. And even to the 21st century, I can say this, second to the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, the Passover and the Exodus night, the night that the firstborn dies, is the most poignant event in all of human history. Everything hitches itself to that until the cross comes. Because that night, the Jews gather around and they make a meal as prescribed by the Lord with lamb and hyssop and bitter roots. And the whole thing is laid out as God had commanded it. And they took the blood of that lamb and they put it on the lintel and on the doorposts. And so that blood would mark. When the death angel would come, if he saw the blood on the doorframe, he knew that the people inside that home were safe. They were covered by the blood of the Lamb. But if the death angel saw a door that didn't have the blood on it, he would go in and kill the firstborn in that home. And it says in the book of Exodus, there wasn't a single home that was left untouched who did not have the blood of the Lamb on their door. And it says the wailing was so loud that everybody in Egypt could hear it. A terrifying scream fills the land. Which at that point, God tells the Israelites, okay, so this is going to happen. The next morning, you better have your sprinting shoes on because we got to go. Okay? Better keep the U-Haul running because you're out of here. And so for 400 years they've been in slavery, and then when God decides to make a move, it's like that quick. Anybody have a story like that? Where you've waited on the Lord, you've prayed, and all of a sudden, when God moves, it's almost instantaneous. Okay, we got to go, but we got to go now. And so they wake up. Pharaoh finally relents. Says, fine, get out of here. Go. Does anybody remember what happens before they leave, though? How the Egyptians feel about the Israelites before they take off? Anything they do? Anybody remember this part of the story? It's really kind of an interesting part. Anybody remember what they do? They give them gifts. Like, please leave. Here, take the couch. Take my 14-year-old. No, he didn't say that. I wouldn't give you away, Jonah. All right, so, but, take the jewelry, take all this stuff. They go from being slaves to walking out as billionaires. And isn't it funny? They have billionaires, but where does God send them? Into the wilderness where they can't spend it, right? That's like finally your parents give you thousands of dollars, but you have to go to Shanico and spend it. I mean, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? Might as well burn it, So they have all this stuff, like the jerk with Steve Martin carrying all this stuff. It's quite a the grapes of wrath leaving Egypt into this wilderness place. And that's how God rescues 2.5 million people with blood, frogs, boils, and 2 old guys. That's how he does it. Well, they come to their first obstacle, if you remember this. They leave the land. You can imagine there's a bit of excitement, a bit of trepidation, probably a little bit of sadness. I mean, as much as they don't want to be slaves anymore, sometimes the unknown is scarier than being a slave. And so they leave and they come upon this grand piece of water called the what? Anybody remember this? The Red Sea. And as they're at the Red Sea, they turn to Moses. And they're like, all right, Mr. Know-It-All, what are we supposed to do now? In fact, are we just going to die here? Is this what you wanted us to do? You can tell they're cranky carrying around all their gold and stuff, Been a long walk. Hey, is this what's going to happen? And now, as they're at the edge of the Red Sea, guess who's coming up behind them? Anybody remember this part of the story? Pharaoh. He has a change of heart. He says, wait a minute, what did I do? I mean, I got to go get these people. I mean, he is just locked in like a pit bull on not letting these people leave. And so they come up with all their armies behind them. The people are freaking out. They yell out to Moses, we're going to die. Why did you bring us out here? We'll actually touch on this in just a bit. And Moses cries out to God, God, what am I going to do with these people? God says, here's what you do. Take your staff, reach it out across the water, and watch what happens. He puts that staff across the water, and what happens? The water splits. And they walk on dry ground. I remember I was with our boys a little while back, and we were walking in San Francisco, driving through San Francisco, I should say. If you've ever been through downtown San Francisco, pretty interesting place. But the skyscrapers go up to the sky. You ever been to like we were in Boston, same kind of thing, driving through there. The skyscrapers are as high as you can see. You look up, I'm taking pictures, and you got to bend way back to get way to the top, I always remember it is probably 20, probably 50 feet between each huge skyscraper. I wonder if that's what it was like to walk through the Red Sea. Like walking through downtown Boston with these buildings, this building of water, these walls of water going up. And you're walking. Let me ask, who of you in the room would touch the wall just to see what it would feel like? Are there any feelers here? See, I wouldn't, because I'm thinking, I touch it, what if the whole thing just comes crumbling down, you know what I mean? No touchy. Out there, if my kids reached out, I'd be smacking their hand, think, don't touch that. Just keep walking fast as the water. And I imagine it'd be like because the Lord's funny with this. It's not going to be some stiff wall. I think there's a little bit of Jello jiggler going to this thing, you know what I mean? Like this, everyone's like, oh, let's get going. It's like this, it's going like this, back and forth. As they're walking through there, they make it through the other side on dry ground, and just as they get across the other side, guess who decides to shoot it as well? Pharaoh and his armies. And God just says, nope. And it just, like skyscrapers falling on top of them, just crushes them. And God removes the obstacle from the Israelites' life, remove the Egyptians, remove Pharaoh, and they're set free. God rescues. Who would have ever thought in a billion years that's how he was going to do it, right? Would you have scripted it out that way? Me neither. So, that next week what we're going to do is we're going to take a look, how does God take them from here to the edge of the Jordan? How does he, because there's a preparation, there's a deliverance, and now there's going to be provision that he's going to give them between here and the promised land. So what I want to do is I want to give you just a couple, 3 high points. So we've flown over it. I want to go back and just point out a few things that might seem interesting to you. One of them I've already touched on a little bit. It's the ministry of a stick and a stutter. All right. So Moses is called to this. Exodus chapter 7, verse 1. Then the Lord said to Moses, "See, I've made you like God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron will be your prophet. You are to say everything I command you, and your brother Aaron is to tell Pharaoh to let the Israelites go out of his country. But I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and though I multiply my miraculous signs and wonders in Egypt, he will not listen to you. Then I will lay my hand on Egypt, and with mighty acts of judgment I will bring out my divisions, my peoples, the Israelites. And the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring the Israelites out of it." Moses and Aaron did just as the Lord commanded them. Moses was 80 years old and Aaron was 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh. A question this morning: are you in a position, or have been in the past, where you felt like you were ill-prepared for what God was asking you to do? Is there anybody here that's been a parent? Is what I'm asking. Raised kids. Anybody here been married? Had a job? Had parents? Had a crazy sister? Anybody have any of those? Are the crazy sister? All right. So the thing is that God consistently puts us in places where we are looking up at him saying, "Are you serious? How am I supposed to pay that off? Are you serious? How am I supposed to get through this? You mean that's the result that's going to come back from the doctor? Are you serious? I can't do this." And sometimes it's not one thing. Sometimes it's like death by 1,000 paper cuts type of thing. And you wonder, hey, God, I know that it says you won't give us more than we can handle, but you obviously have sent this to the wrong address. I think this is for somebody else, because I'm not doing well. I'm 80 years old in my spirit. And you're asking me to do a miracle. Well, yeah. But when miracles happen, who gets the glory? God does. See, the things that I can do that are within my control and sphere of influence, guess who gets the glory when that happens? Well, I do, right? "Hey, Mike, you did a good job here. Hey, you did a good job there." I said, "Yeah, I worked really hard on that. I worked thank you very much." And, and there's nothing wrong with that. Don't misunderstand me. I think there is a sense that we can do some good things and be appreciated for them, But there are things in life where God puts us in places where somebody looks and says, "Boy, if Mike didn't have the Lord in his life, he'd be dead." Because he's too dumb to work his way through that. Man, if he didn't have the Lord in his life, there's no way he should be standing. No way. And they're right. But that's the way the Lord likes it. Sometimes life is about being a walking billboard of the goodness and grace of God. Not the fact that you figured it out, not the fact that you were Christian Bale and you had big ripply muscles and a perfect jawline. And yeah, he rescued. He was faithful. He rescued Egypt. And again, I haven't seen the movie, so maybe but just I can only imagine. He did it. I'd love a man like that in my life. Oh man, yeah. No, just an 80-year-old guy and an 83-year-old guy. There's no way they didn't have the Lord. They couldn't even have made the journey from Midian. They would have died on the way. Remember the story of Gideon? And there's 250,000 soldiers and he has 32,000 to battle against. Remember the story? It's interesting. God turns to one of the angels, says to him, if we send them in there, 32,250, even if they win, they're going to think that they did this. They're going to be pounding their chest saying, yeah, we're the man, we're the man. So we're going to have to rescue them from themselves. So here's what we're going to do. And he drops that number from 32,000 down to how many? Anybody remember how many was left out here? 300. 300. I taught this lesson about, maybe 5-6 years ago, and I feel like I need to go back and repent of the entire lesson. It was at a men's retreat. And at a men's retreat, you want to talk about being strong and tough. So I did Gideon, and I use clips from that movie 300, the movie? And I'm like, yeah, they were the bold 300. They went out. This is a good day to die. And they were powerful and strong. And so the end of it is that you be one of the 300. You be someone that stands at Hell's Gate for Jesus and be strong. And I look back, I'm like, that's so not the point of the story. I think those 300 say, we are the most unluckiest men in the world. And we're supposed to do what? A jar, a flame, and we're supposed to yell, a jar and a torch, and we're supposed to bang some stuff together? That's how we're going to do it? It says, oh yeah, I got this whole thing figured out. The God says, why is that? Because at the end of it, the 300 look at each other and said, man, this is of the Lord. There's no way this should have worked. And those are the best stories to tell. I can tell you here at Real Life, there's no reason we should be around. Some of you know that if it wasn't for the Lord, we'd be gone a long, long time ago. And it wasn't because of grit or hard work. Sure, there was our part, don't misunderstand me. But it was the Lord. Still is. Still is. Second thing I think is worth mentioning in this as we fly over. When you go to Exodus 14, when they're standing at the foot of the Red Sea, this is pretty amazing. Moses says to them that they've been complaining. Listen to this complaint, verse 10. As Pharaoh approaches, Exodus 14:10, as Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. And they were terrified, and they cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, was it because there were no graves? And listen to the sarcasm, dripping, contemptuous sarcasm. Just want you to know, sarcasm has been around from the beginning of time. They said to Moses, was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? This victim mentality all the time. Victim. They had just walked out. They're still covered in gold. And here's what they're saying. We didn't want this. We don't want any of this. It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. Total slave victim mentality. So Moses answers the people. Do not be afraid. That's where it's coming from, by the way, fear. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. And the Egyptians you see today, you'll never see them again. And the Lord will fight for you. You need only be still. What's their job? Be still. And I used to stop right there, and I used to teach that that's all we got to do. We just got to be still, just sit, watch and wait, watch what the Lord's going to do. And there's a part of that that's totally true. In fact, I have the saying up here, it's kind of backwards from what we're normally taught. Don't just do something, sit there. We normally say what? Don't just sit there, do something, right? Actually, it's quite the opposite. We have a friend of ours that says all the time, it's not the direction I'm going, it's the speed in which I want to get there. That's my problem. I don't know where I'm going, but wherever I'm going, I just want to get there really fast. Anybody in a rush to somewhere where they don't know where they're going? Like, I really want this day to get by quick. Why? Well, I don't know. I just feel like I need to get it done. Well, there is a part of sitting there. But listen to the next verse. This is the thing, as I was reading through this again, that really struck me. Verse 15. So, verse 14 says, the Lord will fight for you. You need only be still. Look at 15. Then the Lord said to Moses, hey, why are you crying out to me? I love that. He's like, what? You're crying? There's no crying in deliverance. That's my best Tom Hanks. There's no crying out here. What are you crying about? Listen, he says, tell the Israelites to move on. Be still and watch him fight. And then be still, and then go, move on. Well, what's it going to be, Lord? Everybody been here? What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to rest or am I supposed to go? Am I supposed to make a left turn or a right turn? Am I supposed to move or not move? Am I supposed to trust him or not trust him? Am I supposed to say yes or am I supposed to say no? Do I buy it or not buy it? Do I expand or do I not expand? Can we go on this? I don't know. I may have mentioned this before, but I was listening to a guy talking about his prayer life. And he was, and the way he described it, he said he was really just kind of complaining, kind of whining to God. And he said one day the Lord just kind of had enough of it. And now I've never had an experience like this, but this guy says he has, and I'll believe him. He said the Lord kind of spoke to him and said, hey, why are you whining? I like wine, but yours has an H in it. I'm not sure what that's all about. And his response to the Lord was, well, you don't understand my day. My week, it's been a bad day. And God's response to him, I thought, was so classic. He said, yeah, and God's response was, who said you're having a bad day? Well, it's like, listen, let's do it like this. Let's not have bad days or good days anymore, okay? Let's just have what we'll call days of grace. And there'll be days where I'll give you the grace to enjoy the day. Then there are going to be days I'm going to give you the grace to endure the day. But they'll all be days of grace. No good, no bad, just grace. I take that here. But some days I just don't know what to do. And in those days that I don't know what to do, I feel in my spirit that I need to wait. I just need to wait, I need to pray, and I feel like something's going to work itself out. Then there's days that I don't know what to do, and I want to wait because I know the decision needs to be made, I just don't want to make it. And in my spirit, I feel that too. Now some of you may be saying, but Mike, how do you know? All I can tell you is that in my spirit, I just kind of know. Now, whatever decision I make, does that mean that it's going to work out the way I want it to work out? No. Because some of you are like, Mike, I need to know. I want to know because if I make this decision, what if it's not the right decision? What if it doesn't turn out this way? What if he leaves? What if it doesn't work out? What if we go broke? What if the nose job doesn't turn out so great? Whatever it is. What if? Well, if you're waiting around for a guarantee, then you'll just be paralyzed forever. But you know in your heart and your spirit that no matter what happens, God's going to give me the grace to get through whatever lies in front of me tomorrow with the decision I make today. So about a month and a half ago, I was feeling really overwhelmed. I knew that my sabbatical was coming to an end. I was determining whether I would take a 3-month extension. I kind of brought that up to the shepherds. I was like just joking around, and they were really, I was like, yeah, that's fine. Which got me really nervous because I thought maybe I just phased myself out of a job. Like they were like way too comfortable with me not coming back. I'm like, whoa, I got to get back and mess some stuff up so I have some job security here. I really need to mess some people's brains up so I can get some counseling. And so anyways, but I knew it was coming, and I'm like, I was excited to come back, but I just felt overwhelmed because I knew that life was changing for me on a personal level and in ministry. And on top of all that, I'm really fallen in love with doing pottery and not just pottery, because I'm not going to make a living making pottery. I'm not that great, but I love sitting with people doing it and listening to people and talking with people. And so I was talking with my friend Bill. He's a counselor over at Watercup Counseling over in Redmond. And I was telling him about this, and I was like, you know what I'd really love to do? I would love to have a studio where There's no couches, no desks or anything, just a couple, 3 wheels and some clay and maybe a kiln, and just invite people to come, and we just stick our hands in some mud and we just talk. Not counseling, I'm not here to fix anybody, just a safe place for people to open up and talk. So we said, hey, he thought that was a real great idea. He's like, well, let's just pray about that. So another thing. Well, then he calls me about a month ago. Hey, Mike, I had some space open up at my place. I think it'd be perfect for what you want to do. Have you ever had your bluff called before on something by the Lord? Where he's like, hey, Mike, you prayed that. You want to do it? Oh. First of all, it's Redmond. No, I'm just kidding. But I was like, well, but there's a lot, Lord. What I've got this, and I've got this, and I've got the ministry, and I've got this, and I've got the kids, and I don't know. So I thought, I'll just pray about it, right? Just pray. Wait, and the Lord will work it out. I prayed on it, and I kept praying on it, and I felt like a pipe that was backed up. Like it wasn't getting better, the pressure was building even more. And then it got worse because Bill then texted me, hey Mike, that one office space that I had got filled up. I was like, oh, thank you Lord, you answered the prayer. He says, oh, no. There's a better spot right behind me that's even bigger that would work out perfect for you. It's a little more money. What do you do? Well, I talk to people, and I want to find as many people as I can to blame it on if it doesn't go right, if they give me good counsel, right? Or there's wisdom in many counselors because you can blame it on people. So I talked to people, and I got mixed reviews on it, which didn't help. I talked to the Lord, and I'm waiting for James Earl Jones to speak to me through the clouds, and so I finally said, I met with Bill. Looked at it, said, I got to make a decision. And so, talking with the shepherds and everybody else, I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. So, over the next 4 or 5 months, my job description here is changing. Now, that being said, let me just put out a few things right out of the gate. I'm going to teach here virtually every Sunday, okay? I'm not going anywhere. I'm still a full-time pastor here at Real Life. I'm not going anywhere. Okay. Some of the responsibilities I have here between the Sundays are going to shift a little bit. But my hope is over the next 4 or 5, 6 months, that as everything establishes itself over there, that I would love to invite every one of you. I'm going to have 3 wheels, so you can come as couples if you like. I want every one of you to come and play in the mud with me, and I would love to hear what God's doing in your life. I want to do it 1 or 2 days a week. It's not counseling because I don't really want to fix you. I just want to listen to you, and maybe in the midst of it, you fall in love with these great stories that God's been doing in your life. And sometimes in the midst of telling your story, sometimes you need a person to say, hey, that sounded like a miracle. That's a beautiful story. And the stories of shame and regret that we pack around, the stories of our slavery aren't meant to be hidden in the shadows. Our 400 years of slavery are meant to be brought out into the open, and we say, listen, I was in a bad way, but look what God has done for me. He's gotten me through it. And I would love to do that with mud all over your hands. If you make something, that's great. If not, that's okay too. That's what's been happening. It's been awesome. I got to tell you, the shepherds here have been great and supportive. Is it going to work? No idea. Financially, is it a risk on my part? Absolutely. There's worse ways to die. We all know that, right? You get one life here on earth. You might as well walk through the Red Sea. Give it a shot, right? Might as well. Which takes us to the last part, which I think is great, and that is gratitude is our heart of worship. When you get through the other side, it's always a place where we made it. When anyone says we made it, what's the look on their face? There's a smile. There's never, we made it. It's worse. It's, that's worship. That's worship. Let's worship the Lord this morning. Let's stand together and pray. Father, I thank you for the morning. I thank you for my friends. Lord, it's January 11th, 2015. We've made it this far. All of us are here. Some of us didn't think we were going to make it, even this morning. But we did. You're here. We worship you. It's beautiful. Each one of us, God, has such a beautiful story to tell. A story of grace and mercy. A story of your keeping power in the midst of tremendous circumstances. Lord, we all have a fantastic story, and you're at the center of it. You love it. You love every part of us. You don't love us in spite of our sin. You love us with all of it. Because you're so big, God. You are so awesome. You have an ability to redeem the shameful parts of our lives, and you turn them into something beautiful, miraculous, and there's stories we get to tell for years to come. Lord, I just thank you for that. Thank you for the deliverance you've had in my life, for how you're continually delivering me. And God, I pray that you continue to do the same with my friends here. Lord, open our hearts as we worship you this morning to say thank you, thank you, thank you. And it's in your name we pray. Amen. Let's worship.